Whoa. All right, I don't know what just happened there or if you guys saw that, but I think we're recording now. So, hey guys, I hope you are enjoying your day off. I do want to challenge you today to do something, whether it's a YouTube video or get outside and run or shoot some hoops in the driveway or do some ball handling in the basement, whatever it is. I challenge you to do something today that will expand your lungs. I'm not asking you to go run 5 miles or anything like that, but it would help keep you conditioned if you did something today to help expand your lungs. Don't just sit on the couch and play video games all day. Find something that you can do. All right, I just want to take a second to look at our flow offense. I know a lot of you are doing a really nice job understanding it, but in case you are, oops, go to number 1. In case you are, there we go, having a hard time with it, or maybe this will help some of you see the bigger picture, I just want to go through some slides that Coach Stowe made and I think can be helpful. First thing, when we're working in flow offense, we really have 4 main spots on the perimeter. Oops. And then we would have, if we have those 4 spots filled on the perimeter, we would have somebody in the dunker spot, either on this side or this side. And then we have 2 spots that we kind of call our spacing spots that help us when someone fingers cut, help us space so we don't have 2 guys sitting in the corner or different situations like that. But on the court, really, like it says, there are 6 spots on the perimeter that someone could be, and 2 spots down in the post where someone could be. All right, so that's the first thing to understand. Where are the possible spots that we could be on the floor? Next, we talk about different size gaps. We have single gaps, which are just between our X's, and we also have double gaps. Here's 1, here's 2, would give us a double gap. If X3 was not here, let's get rid of X3, then there would also be a double gap on this side. So single and double gaps. Yeah, there we go. We also have a triple gap, and that would be, notice we have one side that's overloaded, and then our X4 stays in the corner. If X4 stays in the corner, then that leaves X3 with a triple gap right here. So there's our terminology, and that's how we understand different gaps. Now, we need to understand our gaps in order to play within our rules. The rules of flow are that if we have a single gap, like between X1 and X4, then we pass through single gaps. If we have a double gap, right here would be a double gap. If we have a double gap, then we drive in double gaps. Now, it's not to say that we would never, ever, ever pass in a double gap. I mean, I guess you could, and it's not like everyone would stop and be lost, but we primarily want to pass through single and drive through double gaps. Like I said, X1 has a double gap in this whole side of the court, and has a single gap to his left. Now, if we pass it, whether we pass guard to guard, like we see here, well, I'll start here. If we pass guard to guard, then we would look to fingers cut. The important thing, and you guys do a nice job of this, is that if you are in the corner and you see that they pass guard to guard, you better get out of the corner and you better be lifting right away to give X1 room to fill that corner. But a guard to guard pass triggers a fingers cut. Now, if, say we make that guard to guard pass, if X4 passes down again, then they would make, we have been calling it a fingers cut. Technically, it's an away cut. but they would make an away cut, passing, then cutting away from the ball. So they would make an away cut. And you guys have, again, done a nice job of that. If we pass guard to guard, or if we pass down, then we are cutting. Now, if we have that sequence, a guard to guard pass and then a downward pass, then X2 is left with some options. X2 then has a single gap to his left, which he could only pass, and then has a double gap, well actually, a triple gap to his right, in which if he's going right, then he would be driving. Now X5 has a decision to make. X5 needs to think about, does my teammate need space, or does my teammate need help? And that's where we need to do a better job playing 0.5, meaning we make a decision in 0.5 seconds. Because like we talked about in practice the other day, if X2 catches and holds for 1 or 2 seconds, then that says to X5, I need to cut up and he needs help. But if X2 catches and right on the catch starts making a drive, then X5 knows, hey, I need to give him space so he has as much room as possible to drive. And I haven't done an awesome job working on playing 0.5 or making a decision right away. But that has to be our mindset, and we'll work on that more and more. Now we would know that if X2 decided to make a downward pass, then we would consider this an away cut as well. He would make an away cut. Any downward pass, any pass towards the baseline triggers some type of cut. Now, another rule, if we are passing up, then we know that X1 stays in that corner. If anytime we pass up or we pass away from the baseline, then the passer stays and spaces out. If there were a situation, really the only little exception that we would have to this, let's say X1 had the ball up here in this spacer spot, and this spot in the corner was open for whatever reason, and it's possible we get like this, but if X1 was in this spacer spot and passed up to X5, we would allow X1 to move back just to give space. So that would be maybe the only exception to that rule, and it makes sense. I mean, on a upward pass, if you're in the corner, we want you to stay put here. But if you happen to find yourself in this spacer spot and this corner was open, if you make an upward pass, we'd want you to move down. Now, this concept, get dirty in the paint, is something that I have not done a good job either of talking a lot about. We just haven't had time to get everything. One of our main concepts in flow is getting into the paint. Because just like on defense, we talk about how we have our 3 zones, right? We have the pressure, we have the control, and then we have the pressure. The reason we do that, everything we do is to try to keep the ball out of the middle. We want to keep the ball out of the paint on defense. So what that means for us on offense is that on offense, we want to do everything we can to get into the paint. We call it in Ludington basketball, get dirty in the paint. So in flow, we are doing a lot of passing, and you guys are doing a nice job passing, cutting, filling, moving, all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, our goal is to use those double and triple gaps to make a drive and get the ball into the paint. That doesn't mean we're scoring every time, but we need to get the ball into the paint. Once the ball gets into the paint, this is where we would look, like we worked on in our Italian shooting drill, this is where we would look to have somebody back cut. And then once somebody back cuts, that allows us to have a little bit more space out here on the 3-point line so other guys can move to space out and fill and get open for that cutter. Because if the back cut's open, let's back up. If X5 is here and drives, and he is not able to score, then we would like somebody from one of these corners to call back cut and back cut, or blind cut. If one of these guys are open, obviously we'll hit him for a layup. But if they are not open, then we still have X5 who's stuck in the paint without the dribble. So we would need these other guys around the perimeter to move to try to get open and help him out. And we haven't gotten quite that far yet with these guys moving around the perimeter. So no worries if you're thinking, geesh, I haven't been doing that in practice yet. We'll be working on it, but that's what we'd like to get to. Really the emphasis of getting dirty in the paint, get the ball in the paint. We've talked about once we get the ball in the paint that we want to penetrate, get the ball in the paint. We want to pitch, get that ball out, and then we want to look to post. That we are going to have a lot of times where our guards are looking to post. So penetrate, pitch, post like we've seen in our shooting drill. Again, now if X3 catches and X5 is driving, or X5 fills the post, if X3 drives the ball here, then X5 would come back out and fill that spot, would go opposite of the drive. But we want to look to penetrate, get dirty in the paint, pitch it out, and then look to post. But it looks like that's all the slides Coach Stowe has here. The other thing that we did talk about, and I'm not going to draw it up on here, but remember we talked about those 5 guys who can look to drift, that if they make a downward, I think there's a slide actually, a situation where we could have seen a drift, yeah, right here, where if, let's say X2 here was one of those 5 guys that I said could drift, if X2 makes a downward pass here, instead of away cutting through, we said that once in a while X2 might take 1 or 2 steps in the paint and then we would drift him off of there, because what that allows us to do is if we have a situation where X2 drifts, and X2 is one of our real good shooters, we have X2 here, we would really like X1 to try to penetrate, to draw in X2's defender, and then to kick out for a 3-point shot. So that's where that drift comes into play. I know we haven't worked on it a lot, but I think it's helpful to see it and where that would come in. All right, that's all I got for the video. I hope that's been a helpful review of flow, and like I said, giving some guys understanding that maybe don't have an awesome grasp on it, or maybe don't understand all the positions or all the cuts and all the terminology. But that's what we are looking at for the basics of flow.